Welcome back, guys, to the top 10 Rocket League players of 2016. We have the real number one this time, kuxir97. You can never have too many cooks. I always say, honestly, I've said it once. But you know what? I'm going to say I've always said it. And honestly, my favorite player in the entire game, just absolutely clutch play after clutch play after clutch play, coming from kuxir. One of the best things I love about kuxir is, like, you can tell, like, at the lands that he is super nervous or, like, super intense during the games, yet he can still perform at the highest of levels. Honestly, probably the best player at RLCS season number 1. Like, if they would have won at least, he would have definitely been the MVP. RLCS season number 2, definitely the MVP there. Absolutely phenomenal play. He always comes up with that really strange, like, clutch goal that, like, people are like, what? Like, when did this happen? Like, how did you do this? When it comes down to the wire, he actually had the overtime game winner to clinch their victory versus Rocket Aces. Probably one of the easiest goals he's ever scored, but he still got it nonetheless. And we'll go right into it, into his accomplishments throughout the year. Just a phenomenal player. One thing that I actually absolutely hate about kuxir is back in 2015, when it's like Cosmic or Flipside, who is better, it was the worst thing ever to be trying to be compared against kuxir, because he would destroy me. Like, he was basically that third rotation on Flipside for a while. They did basically invent the three-man rotation style, like, or at least made it the most successful style, and that's mostly because kuxir was their third man on defense. But he was so goddamn good on offense that he would come up and score phenomenal goals either way. So they started rotating him in more and more. He was probably the best just point-blank goalie for shots in the game already. And then to top it all off, he was one of the best shooters in the game as well. And it's just wrong. It's just wrong to be compared against kuxir. That's the one thing I absolutely hated about playing. I was like, you know what? We're never going to be better than Flipside because I can never amount to what kuxir97 does. And it starts out the year where they were still probably the best team in the world, getting the first place in Gfinity Invitational. We talked about this before. They lost 4-0 to Noble and then just ran the table in the lower bracket, absolutely dominating every single team, finishing 10 wins in a row, 9-0 the last 2 rounds. And it's just one of those things. You can't put Flipside their backs like to the corner, because it's very hard to beat them when they absolutely need to win in the biggest situations. And kuxir with that Batmobile is one of those reasons. You just can't let him have the ball. Like, every time he touches the ball, you have to be really worried that he's going to pull off something phenomenal to score a goal. One of the best goals I've ever seen from him was RLCS Season 1. The ball's in the corner. He backs up, does a backwards aerial, and just, like, dribbles it in so casually. Made it look so easy. Yet, like, if I tried that 1,000 times, I could probably not pull it off. He's just one of those players that can make some of the best plays I've seen off the wall. He was one of the first players to become one of the best wall players in the game. His defensive clears were just phenomenal off the walls. He would go for the aerial dribble clear, but always be in the right place for the 50-50 dunk to get a pretty solid clear on it. And he had some turmoil, though. Like, after the RLC Pro League second place finish, where they played extremely well, just lost to Rocket Aces 5-4 in the finals in a phenomenal series, one of the best series you'll ever watch. There was some turmoil going on where the kuxir was trying to find his game again. He switched to the Octane, he was switching cars, and he just wasn't playing the same kuxir style that we've seen from him before. And but it worked out. He put a lot of time in. He actually so he used to stream a decent amount, and then when that started happening, he wanted to really focus on his gameplay. Didn't stream all that much, and it definitely paid dividends going into RLCS season number 1, where they finished first place in qualifier number 1, getting the second seed out of Europe, with Weedham Girls always being right there with Flipside, but they defeated Mach 4-0 in the semis, showing that there's really no other team besides Weedham Girls that could compete with Flipside on the European side, which is the best region in the world, has been all year, except for 2 magical days where Cosmic pulls out the victory. But a phenomenal performance there, but they did struggle in their Rocket Royales. Like, this was, again, during that time where they were trying to figure things out. It wasn't really working all that well. They only got 1 first-place finish out of 6 Rocket Royale internationals, the tougher version of the Rocket Royale, and 2 third-place finishes as well. Only 3 podium spots and only 1 first place is not that great for them, but when it mattered the most for the RLCS, they usually showed up, and they showed up big. Kuxir throughout the entire RLCS season number 1, finished number 3 in goals per game, number 4 in assists. Again, same as Markey, just doing it on both sides of the offensive side at least. And of course, he was known as one of the best defenders in the game. The only problem was they just didn't let teams shoot on them that much, so his saves per game are not that high. And one other thing for RLCS season number 1, number 3 shooting percentage, absolutely phenomenal. And again, one of the biggest things with Flipside is how smart they play on the ground with ground passing. As you can see here with him and Scrub as well, lots of ground passing. They don't use the walls that much because the walls take a lot of time to get passes off, so they know how to position themselves for ground passes. They know how much time they have. Extremely smart player in Kuxir, and again, pulling off some of the most crazy things you'll ever see in high-pressure situations. We'll go straight over to the next replay. And then we can gush on Kuxir more. One of my favorite players ever. Let's go right into this. We'll go over to Kuxir. And we'll go into quarter number 3 to continue this journey. This is where Kuxir, like, he was always a name. He was always known as one of the best players in the world, but to show it at one of the most high-pressure places at the first Season 1 of LAN, this is where the Batmobile between him and Over Zero increased in sales 12.5% right after LAN, which is not as much as I thought, but still increased in sales a decent amount. Known as the Italian Batman, where he basically got that name for the RLCS season number 1, just performing amazing. They had a little bit of trouble, though. Got in 4th in qualifier number 2. Lost an incredible series against Supersonic Avengers. Again, one of the best series that we've seen as well. To go down to the 3rd place game, and then they got DQ'd because Mike Rules did not show up in time. So they got the 2nd seed going into the LAN, which actually hurt them a lot because they had to play IBP Cosmic twice, which that was the only team that could beat Flipside at this LAN. They lost them 3-2 in incredible series. Like, Over Zero, one of the best goals, Game 4 overtime when they're down 2-1. To bring that to a Game 5. One of the best series we've seen, but then again, in the lower bracket, when their backs are against the wall, they just don't lose. They beat Kings of Urban, they beat Exodus, Flying Dutchman, and Northern Gaming. They're basically arch rivals. And then it came down to the classic of like the 2 most popular teams from the 2 regions, iBuyPower Cosmic versus Flipside. You couldn't have asked for a better final. Like you see, like the underdog of iBuyPower Cosmic coming out of nowhere to make the final versus not necessarily the favorites to win, but one of the 2 favorites to win the first LAN. Was kind of like a storybook ending, if only we got a bracket reset, but they fall to iBuyPower Cosmic 4-2. But Kuxir, again, had a phenomenal LAN. Some of the best goals we've seen, and they happened at the LAN where a lot of teams didn't get a lot of practice in because there was a lot of practice mishaps going on before the first LAN, but finished number 3 in goals per game at the LAN. And again, like, Flipside just dominated on the offensive side. They had so much pressure throughout all of the LAN. Finished with the most shots per game. They finished with the 2nd least shots against per game. They also had the most goals per game as well. It's just they came up against a Cosmic team that was just playing phenomenal defense. It really worked against Flipside. Like, Flipside was not expecting such great defense from Cosmic. And it wasn't that Flipside was necessarily shooting poorly. They were shooting pretty decently. Cosmic was coming up with some phenomenal saves. And it cost them the title there for Flipside. Finishing number 2. And then we go into the final quarter of 2016. There wasn't much going on besides the RLCS, and RLCS season number 2 was definitely a flip side controlled of RLCS through and through, basically. They qualified actually by beating Mike Rules' fun team, which was pretty fun to see Mike Rules versus Flipside. This is when they picked up Greasy Meister, which we said before in just the last video with Marky Duda, so I'm not going over as much specifics as I usually do. But they go into it first in Europe, defeating Northern Gaming 7-0 between the regular season and playoffs, absolutely destroying them, beating Precision-Z as well, 4-1. And once again, it was Europe has 2 teams, Northern Gaming and Flipside. Machina Aces were starting to get there, and they really did show it at the LAN by defeating Flipside, but it's very hard to stay at number 1 in the toughest region. And Flipside basically did it all through 2016. The only time they didn't was during those summer months or the late spring, early summer months when Weedham Girls was just an absolute dominant force in Rocket Royales. But besides that, everyone knew that, like, if you want to win a championship, you're going to have to go through Flipside. You're going to have to go through Kuxir, who can score phenomenal goals at a drop of the hat, and it plays amazing defense when he needs to, which they don't need to that much because of how much pressure that Flipside puts on. But he's definitely my favorite player, was my favorite player at the LAN, was my MVP. He actually started off a little slow, I thought. On day 1 again, Flipside, they weren't playing that well. They defeated Take-3 3-1, but nothing like too dominant. And then they lost to Machina Aces 3-1. And you could see the nerves. Like Marky even said that they had some nerves in that first series versus Take-3, and it took them a while to warm up. Kuxir didn't show up that big during day 1, but day 2, he started putting in shots. Some of those really tough aerial shots. Probably one of the best aerial shooters in the game. And really propelled them through the lower bracket. Of course, not alone. Greasy and Marky also did their part as well. But, like, if you ask probably 9 out of 10 hardcore fans, if you're like, who's the best in the world? Or who's the best in the world, at least in the RLCS? Some people might say Scrub and stuff like that. But at this point, you're going to get a lot of Kuxir answers because he just shows up. Shows up when it matters. Even when he looks, like, he always looks so nervous at these LANs, which is my favorite part, because we're like, Kuxir, like, you're the best in the world, on the best team. No reason to be nervous, man. Like, we know you're going to pull off phenomenal stuff, and look, that's the thing, he just doesn't make mistakes. Like, none of his hits are mistakes, and then he'll pull off goals that basically no one else even thinks about doing, and is why Kuxir is number 1 on my list. And look, we've gone through 10 players, all phenomenal players, mostly from Europe. We had 7 out of the 10 come from Europe. I threw in 3 Europe players. We actually had 4 Flipside Tactics members throughout the list, 3 Northern Gaming members throughout the time, like if you count Greasy for both. And Flipside and Northern Gaming just absolutely dominating because that's what they did all year in 2016. Was just, it was these 2 teams were the teams to beat, and the only downside was Northern Gaming just couldn't find it during LAN. They came in 3rd both times. They just couldn't find that extra win after the loss in the upper finals. But these 2 teams dominated the entire time. But all 10 players are phenomenal. There's plenty of players that I've left off as well, like Devo. A lot of people thought might be on this list, but honestly, he only showed up for the last 3 months of the year. He wasn't that great before that. He's obviously going to be an outstanding player going into 2017. Same with Kuxir, obviously. Like Flipside, they didn't make any roster moves. 2017 is going to be a great year for them, I bet. It's going to be between them and Northern Gaming once again to see who's the best team in the world. You expect, unless North American can somehow show up, but it's doubtful. But players like Devo, players like Sicky, who had a lot of good results, I just thought he wasn't necessarily the carry of those teams, so I left him off. Then you got other North America players like Jacob, like Lachino, all having pretty good years. Wouldn't be near the top, of course, but had a chance to make the top 10. But you can only have 10 players, and you can't have everyone on the list. And then we got like newcomers coming in, so look out in 2017 for players like Squishy Muffins, Vince again. Like, he had a phenomenal last season. Look out for him. Devo, of course. Look out for him. Violent Panda had a phenomenal season. And with their new roster, who knows what's going to happen with Machina Aces. But Violent Panda showed up late, like at the LAN. Mystic started showing up pretty big at Season 2 LAN. So we'll see what he can do. The Supersonic Avengers boys, all three, split up, but they're looking for different teams. So we're going to see what goes on between those guys. A lot of roster shuffle going on. It's going to be really exciting when Season 3 hits to see who comes out on top. But these top 5 players, you can guarantee that you're going to see probably these guys near the top once again competing at Season 3 LAN, whenever that may be, because they're just so consistently good. And even though this game, like, it's starting to pick up a lot of popularity, and you're going to start seeing some newcomers come in that have, like, some crazy work ethic. But one thing I love about Flipside in the game, it seems like they're slowly getting that work ethic down and getting a lot of practice in, and really showing up in the big moments, as we'll see here soon from kuxir in his phenomenal overtime goal in this game. But it was a great 2016, guys. I hope you enjoyed this list, and I expect even bigger things from 2017, some more high-pressure situations to see how these players perform. We'll see if we can start collecting some trends. Like, we have some trends going on now, but there's only been 2 LANs. I just want to see more live events, see what players really step up time and time again at these events. And one of those players is kuxir97, showing up at both LANs. Could have easily walked away with 2 MVPs for both the LANs. And players like Maestro showing up really big at both LANs. Then you get, like, these random players like Over0 just showing up out of nowhere and performing really well at the first LAN. We'll see if we get players like that. So it should be a lot of fun. And I hope you enjoyed this list. I can only say so much about these guys because they're just phenomenal players. But kuxir97, my favorite player in Rocket League, and my #1 player from 2016. And here's that goal. Just kuxir doing kuxir things. And thanks for watching, guys. We'll see you in 2017. And yeah, hopefully you'll see a lot of me in 2017. And hopefully we see some of these amazing players once again. And some newcomers. Like, I want to see some fresh blood coming in. But yeah, thanks for watching, guys. And yeah, we'll see you in 2017. Later.